The top 5 running backs in football. That will be our discussion for today. This is regarding fantasy football, PPR leagues, points per reception. Those are the leagues I usually play in. Okay, so let's start with number 1. I think this player should be number 1 overall the whole draft. Christian McCaffrey from the Carolina Panthers. Okay, so I was actually surprised in one of my leagues. I had number 2 overall pick, and the person ahead of me chose Saquon Barkley, number 1 overall. I personally thought there was too much risk in drafting him. He missed a couple games last year. I know he's a stud and he'll put up points, but I just think there was too much risk, and I think Christian McCaffrey was the number 1 pick. And luckily in that league, I was fortunate enough to draft McCaffrey at number 2. I thought that was a steal. So let's start off with his total yards rushing. 1,387 rushing yards on 287 attempts with 15 touchdowns last year. Receiving yards, 1,005 receiving yards for 116 receptions, 4 touchdowns. So he had over 2,000 yards total, 19 touchdowns last year. That's insane. 1,000 receiving yards. It's very great for a PPR league. He'll be putting up great numbers for whoever drafts him. I think he's the number 1 overall pick in general. And with that, we bounce to number 2, Saquon Barkley. Saquon Barkley, number 2. You can't go wrong with him. Yes, he missed a couple games, but he's great. He'll make plays. He'll score touchdowns. He'll put up the points. He'll miss some games maybe. I hope not. I hope he's healthy this whole year. But with that risk, even with that risk, you still got to draft him. Number 2 overall. It's just, he's the best running back available at this time. Okay. 217 attempts, 1,003 rushing yards, 6 touchdowns last year. For receiving, he had 52 receptions, 438 yards, and 2 touchdowns, and that was still with him missing some games. So I think he's still a solid pick. You cannot miss out on him. Number 3, Ezekiel Elliott from the Dallas Cowboys. I think this is number 3. 301 attempts, 1,357 yards, and 12 touchdowns. For receiving, he had 420 yards for 54 receptions, 2 touchdowns. He's solid. He won't put up the points that McCaffrey and Barkley will put, at least not every week, but he's solid. He'll be consistent. He'll give you consistent points, and he'll have a couple breakout games. He has a great offense despite losing the center, Frederick. So I see this as a great solid pick for number 3. For number 4, we have Dalvin Cook from the Minnesota Vikings. This is one of my favorite players. Yes, I'm a Minnesota Viking fan, but there's risk to drafting him. He's injury prone. If you want to draft Dalvin Cook, I would suggest you draft Alexander Madison, his backup, just in case anything happens. You could draft Madison later on in the draft. Okay, 250 attempts, 1,135 rushing yards, and 13 touchdowns. He had 53 receptions, 519 yards with 0 receiving touchdowns. He did miss a couple games last year, but that's still great. Over 1,000 rushing yards and over 500 receiving yards last year. I think this year he will be used more now that Gary Kubiak is the offensive coordinator. He will use Dalvin Cook more as a rusher, as a receiver, and now with Diggs gone, he'll be more of a target. So this is a great pick. Just keep in mind, injury prone. Draft his backup, and you're solid. For number 5, this is debatable, risky, you'd say, but I'm going with Clyde Edwards-Helaire the Kansas City Chiefs. He's a rookie, junior from LSU. He had 215 attempts for 1,414 yards, 16 rushing touchdowns, 55 receptions, 453 receiving yards, and 1 touchdown. Great stats for college. Hopefully he can transfer that to the NFL, but I chose him at number 5 based on Damian Williams opting out. So this puts Hilaire at number 1 RB for the Kansas City Chiefs. With Mahomes, that great offense, so many weapons, he will be used, and I just don't see this as a bad pick. It's perfect. There is some, risk in there, but I feel like there's a lot of upside there, and it's a great pick. He'll get the targets, and he'll get the opportunity to score some touchdowns. He is my number 5. I do have some honorable mentions for the 5th position. That would be Joe Mixon. Joe Mixon from the Bengals. I feel like he's going to do great this year. A lot of receptions. Joe Burrow's there. The receivers are great now. They're healthy. So I think their offense is going to be great. And another one is Derrick Henry. He's a solid pick. He was originally my number 5, but I decided to go with Hilaire because of Mahomes' championship team offense, and since Damian Williams opted out, I thought this was the perfect choice. But Henry at number 5 or Hilaire, both great choices. I think Hilaire has the edge slightly, unless Henry goes off, but I think you cannot go wrong with either of these picks. So this is my top 5. McCaffrey at number 1. Do not make the mistake that the guy did in my league. I think he's on another level. Barkley number 2, Ezekiel Elliott number 3, Dalvin Cook at 4, Hilaire at number 5. Honorable mentions: if you're stuck in one of the mid picks, go ahead and choose one of those. But you could even choose Nick Chubb, Josh Jacobs, even Carson. They're a little bit more risky, but if you're stuck in those middle rounds and you need some RBs, those are some other solid RBs. So that's my top 5, and good luck.